A customer walked into the shop last spring, 63 years old, retired firefighter. He had just spent $19,000 on a brand new Harley-Davidson Street Glide because his buddy at the firehouse told him it was the best touring bike money could buy. He rode it home from the dealer, parked it in his garage, and called me 2 days later because his lower back was so locked up he could barely get out of bed. The bike weighed 847 pounds wet. He had a bad left knee from 30 years of climbing ladders, and the forward controls on that Harley had his legs stretched out so far that every bump in the road shot straight up his spine with nowhere to go. He asked me what I thought. I told him to sell it. He lost $3,200 on that transaction in under a week. I have been working on motorcycles for over 20 years, and I have watched this exact scenario play out dozens of times. A guy in his 50s or 60s walks into a dealership, picks a bike based on looks or brand loyalty or whatever his neighbor rides, and ends up with a machine that fights his body every single mile. The right motorcycle for a senior rider is not about horsepower, or chrome, or what looks cool parked at the coffee shop. It is about ergonomics, weight distribution, and whether you can actually ride the thing for 2 hours without needing a chiropractor. I'm going to walk you through the 3 best motorcycles for riders over 55 in 2026. These are not theoretical picks from a spec sheet. These are bikes I have worked on, recommended to customers, and watched people actually enjoy riding year after year. I saved number 1 for last because it is the one that gets overlooked the most, and it is also the one that could save you the most money and the most pain over the next decade. They build on each other, so stay with me through all 3. Number 3. The 2026 Kawasaki Vulcan S. If you are shopping for your first senior-friendly motorcycle, you will probably walk straight past this one. You see the word Kawasaki and think sport bike. You see the relatively small engine displacement and assume it is a beginner bike you will outgrow in 6 months. Both of those assumptions are wrong, and both of them cost people money. The Vulcan S runs a 649 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled parallel twin that puts out 60 horsepower and 46.5 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers do not sound impressive next to a 1,700 cubic centimeter Harley. But here is what those numbers actually mean in the real world. Smooth, predictable power delivery from a standstill, easy highway merging, and an engine that does not try to rip your arms off every time you crack the throttle. For a rider with slower reflexes or weaker grip strength, that kind of linear power is not a compromise. It is a safety feature. The thing that makes this bike special for older riders is one word: ErgoFit. Kawasaki's ErgoFit system lets you adjust the seat, the foot pegs, and the handlebar position across 18 different configurations. 18. That is not marketing fluff. That is 3 positions for the seat, 3 for the foot pegs, and 2 for the handlebars, and they multiply out into 18 distinct rider triangles. After you buy the bike, you take it back to the dealer and they adjust it to your exact body dimensions at no extra charge. A rider who is 5'6" gets a completely different setup than a rider who is 6'2" on the same motorcycle. I have never seen another manufacturer do this at this price point. Why does this matter for your back? Because back pain on a motorcycle comes from one of 3 things: your knees being too bent or too straight, your arms reaching too far forward or sitting too high, or your hips being tilted at the wrong angle. The rider triangle, which is the geometric relationship between your hands on the grips, your butt on the seat, and your feet on the pegs, determines all 3. Get that triangle wrong, and you are in pain at mile 30. Get it right, and you can ride for 3 hours without thinking about it. The seat height is 27.8 inches. That is low enough that you can plant both feet flat on the ground at a stoplight, which matters more than you think when you are 60 years old and holding up 498 pounds of motorcycle at an intersection. The curb weight with ABS comes in at just under 500 pounds. That is manageable. You can walk it backward out of a parking space without throwing your back out. A customer of mine, 61 years old, retired postal worker, bought a Vulcan S 2 years ago for just over $8,000. I set up his ErgoFit in the reduced reach position because he is about 5'8" with shorter arms. He rides it 3 to 4 times a week, mostly around town with occasional weekend trips of 80 to 100 miles. His total maintenance cost in 2 years has been 2 oil changes and a set of tires. That is roughly $380 total. He told me last month that it is the best purchase he has made since his house. The 2026 Vulcan S starts at $7,649 without ABS and $8,149 with ABS. Get the ABS. That extra $500 is the cheapest insurance policy you will ever buy. The Cafe version with the tinted wind deflector runs $8,749, and honestly, for highway riding, that deflector is worth it. Wind fatigue at 65 miles per hour is real, and it gets worse as you age. Who should skip it? If you want to do long-distance touring with a passenger and luggage, the Vulcan S is not your bike. The 3.7-gallon fuel tank limits your range, and there is no factory luggage option that is worth recommending. This is a daily rider and a weekend cruiser, not a cross-country tourer. And remember that retired firefighter I mentioned at the top. He needed more than a weekend cruiser. He needed something that could handle real miles without destroying his body. That brings us to number 2, which is built for exactly that kind of riding. Number 2, the 2026 Honda Rebel 1100 DCT. And this is where I am going to make some Harley guys mad. The Rebel 1100 is the bike that Honda built for people who want a real cruiser without the punishment that traditionally comes with the category. It is powered by a 1,084 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled parallel twin borrowed from the Africa Twin Adventure bike, which is one of the most proven engines Honda has ever built. It makes around 86 horsepower and 72 pound-feet of torque, tuned specifically for low-end grunt and mid-range pull. You do not need to wind this engine up. It just goes when you ask it to. But the reason the Rebel 1100 is on this list and not the Rebel 500 comes down to 3 letters. DCT, dual clutch transmission. The DCT version of this bike has a fully automatic 6-speed gearbox. You twist the throttle and ride. No clutch lever, no shifting, no stalling at a red light because your left hand got tired and you let the clutch out too fast. For a rider over 60 with arthritis in their hands, reduced grip strength, or just general fatigue in stop-and-go traffic, the DCT is a different experience entirely. I had a customer tell me that the DCT is the reason he is still riding at 68. His hands could not handle a manual clutch anymore. The DCT gave him another 10 years on 2 wheels, and I believe him. And if you want manual control, you can switch to manual mode and use paddle shifters on the left handlebar to select your own gears. Best of both worlds. I have seen riders start in full automatic mode and gradually move to manual as their confidence builds. There is no wrong way to ride this thing. The seat height is 27.9 inches. The curb weight comes in at 497 pounds for the DCT model. Those numbers are almost identical to the Vulcan S, but you are getting nearly twice the engine displacement and a transmission that eliminates hand fatigue entirely. The riding position is upright and relaxed. Honda raised the handlebars and pulled them back toward the rider for the current generation, and they moved the foot pegs slightly forward. The result is a neutral riding triangle that keeps your spine straight and your weight distributed evenly. This is the riding position that causes the least amount of lower back compression over time, and I have the customer feedback to prove it. Now here is the part that connects back to the story I opened with. Remember the retired firefighter who lost $3,200 on that street glide? I put him on a Rebel 1100 TDCT. That is the touring version with the factory fairing and hard saddlebags. He paid $11,599 out the door. He has been riding it for 14 months now. 0 back pain, 0 hand fatigue. And he saved over $7,000 compared to what he originally spent on the Harley. He called me last month to tell me he just got back from a 600-mile weekend trip to the coast with his wife, following in the car. First time he has done a trip like that in 5 years. That is what the right motorcycle does. It gives you your freedom back. The Rebel 1100 comes with cruise control, traction control with 3 levels, 4 ride modes, including a rain mode, ABS, and a 5-inch TFT display with Honda RoadSync smartphone connectivity. Every single one of those features matters for a senior rider. Cruise control saves your throttle hand on the highway. Traction control keeps the rear tire from breaking loose on wet pavement. Rain mode softens the throttle response when conditions get slick. These are not toys. These are safety systems. The 2026 Rebel 1100 DCT starts at $10,399. The standard manual version is $9,199. But for this audience, the DCT is the one to get. The Rebel 1100 TDCT with fairing and bags runs $11,599 to $11,700, depending on color. Compare that to a Harley Softail Standard at $15,999 or a Street Glide at over $23,000, and the value gap speaks for itself. If you are finding this useful, hit subscribe. I cover motorcycle maintenance and buying advice every week, and the goal is always the same: keep you riding longer, riding safer, and spending less money doing it. Now, the Rebel 1100 solved that firefighter's problem. But what if your plans are bigger than weekend trips? What if you want to throw a passenger on the back, pack a week's worth of gear, and disappear across 3 states without a single ache in your body? That is a different ask entirely, and it requires a different kind of machine. Number 1. The 2026 Honda Goldwing Tour DCT. I know, 806 pounds. That number scares people. I get it. But let me explain something that the spec sheet does not tell you. The Goldwing carries its weight lower than any touring motorcycle ever built. Honda's horizontally opposed flat-six engine sits in the frame like a boxer engine in a Porsche. The cylinders lay flat, left and right, which drops the center of gravity down to roughly where your knees are when you are sitting on the bike. The result is that an 806-pound Goldwing feels lighter to handle at walking speed than a 750-pound Harley Road Glide, and I am not exaggerating. I have put nervous 60-year-olds on Goldwings in parking lots and watched them do slow figure eights within 20 minutes. The weight disappears once you understand where it sits. The engine is an 1,833 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled flat 6 that makes 125 horsepower and 125 pound-feet of torque. It is the smoothest engine in motorcycling. There is zero vibration and zero harshness at any RPM. At highway speed, this engine feels like an electric motor with a pulse. That smoothness matters enormously for older riders because vibration is one of the biggest contributors to hand numbness, arm fatigue, and spinal discomfort on long rides. Every buzz and rattle you feel through the handlebars is energy your body has to absorb. The Goldwing eliminates almost all of it. The DCT version runs a 7-speed automatic transmission with an overdrive 7th gear for highway cruising. Same concept as the Rebel 1100 DCT, no clutch lever and no shifting required. Just twist and ride, but with 7 gears instead of 6. The engine sits at lower RPM on the highway, which means less noise, less vibration, and better fuel economy on long hauls. Honda also gives you a walking mode on the DCT, which lets you creep the bike forward or backward under power at walking pace. Getting a fully loaded 800-pound touring bike out of a parking spot on a slight incline is one of the most intimidating things in motorcycling. Walking mode turns it into a non-event. The front suspension is a double wishbone design, not a telescopic fork, a double wishbone, like a car. Honda is the only motorcycle manufacturer using this suspension geometry on a production touring bike, and they have been doing it since the 2018 redesign. The advantage for comfort is significant. It changes the wheel's travel path so that bumps are absorbed more vertically instead of being pushed back into the handlebars. If you have ever ridden a traditional touring bike and felt every expansion joint and pothole rattle through your wrists and shoulders, the Goldwing's front end will feel like a different category of vehicle. Because it is. The seat height is 29.3 inches. That is slightly higher than the Rebel or the Vulcan S, but the narrow midsection of the bike and the way the seat is sculpted means if you are over 5'7", you can get your feet down comfortably. Honda also includes Hill Start Assist on every model, which holds the bike on an incline after you release the brakes, so there is no rollback. That feature alone takes more stress off an older rider than any gadget I can think of. Let me tell you about the comfort systems, because this is where the Goldwing earns its price. Heated grips come standard on every trim. Electrically adjustable windscreen with a 4.9-inch range and automatic memory. Cruise control. 4 ride modes: Tour, Sport, Rain, and Econ. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto through a full-color TFT display. Premium speakers integrated into the fairing. And on the Tour model, you get a 61-liter top trunk that fits 2 full-face helmets, plus 2 saddlebags with 60 liters of combined storage. You can pack for a 2-week trip on this motorcycle and still have room for souvenirs, But the feature that matters most for senior riders is the reverse gear. Every Goldwing has a reverse function. On the DCT models, it is electric reverse. You press a button, and the bike rolls backward under its own power. You are not walking 800 pounds backward with your legs. You are not straining your knees against a curb, and you are not risking a tip over in a gravel parking lot. For a 65-year-old with a replaced hip or a bad rotator cuff, this is not a luxury. It is the difference between riding and not riding. A customer of mine, 72 years old, retired airline pilot, has been riding a Goldwing Tour DCT for 3 years now. He does a 2,000-mile trip every summer with his wife on the back. I service the bike twice a year. In 3 years and roughly 28,000 miles, his total unplanned repair cost has been $0. Scheduled maintenance has been oil changes, brake fluid, final drive oil, and a set of tires. Total cost over 3 years, roughly $1,400. On a $30,000 motorcycle, that is a maintenance cost of about 5 cents per mile. The bike has not left him stranded once. It has not developed a single electrical fault. It just works every single time he turns the key. That is Honda engineering at its peak, and it is the reason Goldwings regularly go 100,000 miles and beyond without major engine work. Now let me address the price, because I know that is what you are thinking. The 2026 Goldwing Tour DCT starts at $30,500. The Tour Airbag DCT, which adds a front deployed airbag for collision protection, runs $33,800. Those are big numbers. I am not going to pretend they are not. But run the math against the alternative. That retired firefighter spent $19,000 on a street glide, lost $3,200 selling it, then spent $11,599 on a Rebel 110T. His total cost to get onto the right bike was $22,800 after the loss. If he had walked into the Honda dealer first and bought a Goldwing Tour DCT, he would have spent $30,500 and been done. The difference is $7,700 for a motorcycle that is in an entirely different class of comfort, technology, and long-term reliability. If you plan to ride for the next 10 to 15 years, the Goldwing is the cheapest option per mile you will find in touring motorcycles. Think of it as the last motorcycle you will ever need to buy. And if $30,500 is genuinely out of reach, here is the move. Buy a used one. A 2020 or 2021 Goldwing Tour DCT with 15,000 to 25,000 miles on it runs $18,000 to $23,000 on the used market right now. These bikes are mechanically identical to the 2026 model. The only differences are color options and minor infotainment updates. At 25,000 miles, a Goldwing is barely broken in. I have seen them run to 200,000 miles with proper maintenance. A used Goldwing at $20,000 is, in my professional opinion, the best deal in motorcycling right now. I do not say that lightly. Who should skip it? If you only want a bike for quick rides around town and you never plan to go farther than 50 miles from your house, the Goldwing is more motorcycle than you need. Get the Vulcan S or the Rebel 1100 and save yourself $20,000. There is no point in buying a long-distance touring bike if you are never going to tour. Be honest with yourself about how you actually ride, not how you fantasize about riding. So here is what it comes down to. The Vulcan S, at $8,149 with ABS, is the best city and weekend cruiser for a senior rider who wants adjustable ergonomics, low weight, and dead simple reliability on a budget. The Rebel 1100 DCT at $10,399 is the best all-around cruiser for a senior rider who wants automatic shifting, real highway capability, and modern safety tech without spending a fortune. And the Goldwing Tour ST at $30,500 is the best touring motorcycle ever built for a rider who wants to put serious miles on the road with zero pain and zero compromise. 3 different bikes, 3 different budgets, 3 different riding profiles, but they all share one thing. They are designed to work with your body instead of against it. That is the only thing that matters after 55. That retired firefighter learned it the hard way. At a cost of $3,200 and a week of back pain, he did not need to suffer. You do not have to make that same mistake. The motorcycle that keeps you riding is always the right motorcycle. The one that puts you in pain is always the wrong one, no matter what brand is on the tank. If you want to go deeper on the Goldwing, I made a full maintenance breakdown showing exactly what to look for when buying a used one and how to keep it running for 100,000 miles. That video is on screen now.